We'll start here, though. Wits University's SRC is meeting the university's Vice-Chancellor this hour, but eNCA has been reliably informed that protests at Wits and UJ have been suspended. Students are demanding that historical debt be scrapped. Our reporters Slindelo Masikane and Mangoba Mkunu are following the protesters for us. They join us now live. Sli, we'll start with you outside Wits University. How's it looking?
Very quiet. It's business as usual here at the Wits University campus in Braamfontein. Much different scenes than what we saw yesterday. We know that majority of the lectures are taking place online, and we understand, of course, that the university is expected to meet with the Wits SRC within this hour. In fact, we were told by the Wits SRC president, and that is to hear what management is going to say around their demands that they have put on the table for the university, and in particular students who are studying here at Wits.
Yeah, and then of course the SRC we spoke to a little earlier. What are they saying in terms of the demands they have and whether or not it's being met?
Well, we know, of course, that there are national, what they call national demands that have been put on the table by the SA Students' Union. Those are all the SRCs, basically, that represent students at the various universities. There are about 15 of those demands that were put on the table. But we also know that individual or SRCs have also put their own demands that affect students at their particular universities. So we know that government has come to the party in addressing majority of those 15 demands that were put on the table by the SA Students' Union. But the Wits SRC president says there are still issues that need to be addressed that affect students in particular here at Wits University. Let's take a listen.
Demands are two-pronged, right? And there's a mistake which must not be made. So we have internal demands as institutions on our own individual capacities. So there might be demands that relate only to Univen, demands that relate only to UKZN, UCT, and demands that would only relate to Wits, for example. Then there's national demands, right, which would have been demands that were shared, I think, were shared by SAUS. So as it regards the demands shared by SAUS, yes, they were met, most of them, but there's demands that we think are still not met and we're not willing to back down on. So internally, for example, at Wits University, none of our demands have been met, and internally we will continue to protest. And then on a national scale, there's demands which we think as Wits University have still not been met, and that would require us to continue taking it to the picket line and protesting. So yes, most have been met as it regards the national agenda of SAUS, but internally, in some universities have not met theirs, and the national project must ultimately, obviously, be free education.
Mangoba, you've been out since earlier on this morning. What transpired today?
Well, Shahan, it's been an unusually quiet day here at the University of Johannesburg. We have been here since the early hours of the morning, and the plan from the student leaders that we got to hear when we arrived here is that they were going to be holding a similar demonstration to the one that we saw yesterday, where they took to the streets of Auckland Park and blockading the streets there and forcing some of those motor vehicles to find alternative routes to travel in. So that was the plan initially from those student leaders. But we do understand, Shahan, that that plan, however, did not quite become successful as the day progressed. And this is because of a clash that apparently took place inside of the university campus between some of the protesting students as well as security personnel. We understand from some of the leaders that the security personnel inside of this campus had gone to some of those students, asking them to leave the campus, and when they refused to do that, they then used tear gas to try and disperse those processing students. But we do understand that from that point, those students then dispersed, and the protest was suspended for the day. But the students are quite adamant, Shahan, that they are going ahead with the national shutdown. In fact, they are saying that they will continue until their demands have been met. Earlier on, I did speak to the SASCO's national organizer, Atembe Mabona, who said this to me.
We are going ahead today, and a shutdown, as we have said in our statement, that it will continue until our demands are met. Other campuses are beginning to join us, CJC is joining, and quite a number of them have joined today across the country. Many universities that had not been able to join us yesterday are calling and saying, we're joining today, we're shutting down our institutions of higher learning. So the shutdown continues, and you will see as the day progresses that our shutdown has not stopped, and it will not stop because of our meetings with the ANC that we had yesterday, because we've had another meeting with the ANC on Friday, we had another one yesterday, we're going to have another one on Thursday to try find ourselves and try find the money that had been taken away, try find solutions to how to deal with financial exclusions and all the crises that we currently face in the higher education sector that primarily deal with the access to higher education.
So, Slee, of course, we saw some students appearing in court today after being arrested for public violence.
Indeed, Shahan, you would have seen many of those scenes unfolding yesterday in the streets of Johannesburg. We understand, of course, that earlier on we had two groups. Those were Wits students protesting in Braamfontein, and then we had students from UJ who were protesting in Auckland Park. At some point during the day yesterday, they converged and met on a net street, which is just outside of the Bunting UJ campus. Students forced their way into the campus. Subsequently, they came out and started burning tires, blocking roads with rubbish, as well as bricks and rocks. And for the most part, the police were just observing the students and kind of diverting traffic away from them, in fact, escorting them throughout the streets of Johannesburg. But once I think police felt that these students were becoming unruly and we had just hit peak time traffic, that is when we started seeing the police using water cannons as well as tear gas to disperse the students. We are hearing, and this is coming from the students themselves, that one of them was shot by the police, but the police are denying this, saying that at no point did they disperse rubber bullets or live ammunition. And we're still yet to hear from the student who was shot. I, in particular, saw her being escorted away in a quantum vehicle that was going to that transported her to Mill Park Hospital. Since then, we know that about 4 students were arrested by the police during that engagement yesterday. They appeared in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court this morning. 2 have been granted bail. The other 2 have been remanded in custody, and their bail hearing will take place on Friday. And this is due to the fact that the NPA says that they need to look into the matter of the fact that they may have pending cases against them or other charges that they may need that they may be facing as well. But let's just take a listen to what the Vice-Chancellor president had to say around those arrests.
Of the first students that, in fact, over the past 2 weeks that we've had in total now at Wits University, I think 11 students that have been arrested. So, and of the 11, 9 have been granted bail and 2 are still in custody, and the others have pending cases. So our position is clear, and our position has been that the criminalization of protest must not be allowed to be a thing that is normalized in our country. In fact, not only the criminalization, but the brutality that comes with protest must be condemned with the urgency it deserves. I think this will be quite visible tomorrow when we go to court, because we plan to go to court tomorrow to go and see how actually court deals or try and understand the impartiality of courts when it comes to dealing with police brutality. and the case of Mthokozi Ntumba in particular. So we will continue to fight for the students that are held in custody now, and we hope that civil society, lawyers, and judges in and of himself can play an activist role in ensuring that activism is not criminalized in our country.
Ngoba, we'll end with you. These concerns about acts of intimidation, what's the word from SASCO?
Indeed, Chad, we did pose that question to SASCO, asking them, their position on this intimidation and acts of harassment of some of the media houses, more especially eNCA. Recall yesterday, Shahan, that we were threatened by some of the students, myself, as well as my colleagues, Lindele Masikane, while covering that protest. But SASCO saying that the acts by some of those students, in fact, are anti-revolutionary, and in fact, condemning those acts of intimidation from those students. But take a listen to what they have to say.
There's been a lot of controversy around eNCA and how it had not been able to deal with racial questions, racism or alleged racism by some of its journalists, top journalists. Of course, you would have seen in Parliament the interviews and so on and so on. It has quite been a trending question that we had said we're not satisfied at how eNCA dealt with the question, but we're saying South African Students' Congress as an NEC were making a bold statement that says each and every media house must be allowed to interview SASCO leaders, must be allowed its freedom. I mean, this is hard-earned freedom for this country, and we're saying the South African Students' Congress was found in trenches together with those liberation movements fighting for media freedom. So we can't be the ones now saying we must stifle the media freedom. No, it is not us that will be saying that. Actually, we'll be at the forefront of saying each and every media house will be allowed to interview or to cover our protests, including not limited to eNCA.